Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub, and what a great pleasure I have on this edition of L'Chaim. For I'm sitting with one of the most remarkable leaders on the American Jewish scene today, for whom I have both the highest personal regard and profound affection. Steve Gutow, a wonderful rabbi, lawyer, community activist, and the man who for the past 10 years has been the president, CEO, and guiding light of a Jewish organization that has led the charge on Jewish social responsibility in our community, the country. It's called JCPA, the Jewish Council for Public Affairs, which serves as the umbrella organization of 14 national organizations and some 125 local Jewish community relations committees, especially on issues related to human rights and the State of Israel. And much of Steve Gutow's work has been in defense of the State of Israel. Steve has also launched the JCPA's Civility Campaign, aimed at restoring civil discourse to the Jewish community and to American public life. And Steve has become a true voice of social conscience on the broader American Jewish scene, becoming a model for Jews who are committed to liberal principles of social justice while maintaining an unwavering commitment to the State of Israel and to the Jewish people. And as we sit together on this edition of L'Chaim, Steve is nearing the end of his 10-year leadership of the JCPA, for in a rather surprising move, certainly one that is atypical in the halls of Jewish organizational life. Steve Gutow has announced he will now be moving on to other things as he concludes his role as president and CEO of the JCPA. And Steve Gutow, my friend, it is so wonderful having you here at this table. Thank you for giving me some time.
It is such a treat for me to be with you, Mark. You know, you're one of my favorite people in the whole Jewish scene, and to be here in this close connection just touches my heart.
Well, it goes double for me. And again, I've said this, when you're not here, there are few people in this Jewish world who have the neshama you do and who have given them of themselves in the way you have. And I hope the audience understands what I'm trying to say. There are very few people, Steve, who have been able to walk both lines at the same time. A passion, on the one hand, this liberal idea, well, if you're on the left, then you're not committed to Israel. If you're committed to Israel today, you've got to be on the right. And you represent the Jewish perspective that both are critical to who we are as Jews, and you've embraced them in a way that has really taught all of us. And you are a model for me, and I love you so much. So, kol hakavod to you and for everything you've done. And you're leaving the JCPA after 10 years. As I say, it is not what is typically done. Normally, people who rise to national prominence in an organization as visible as JCPA, they stay forever. And then they stay a little bit longer after that as well, in an emeritus position. Why are you leaving? What prompts you at this point in your life to say, 10 years, I'm moving on?
Look, it's time. 10 years is a long time in an organization that lives in trying to walk the center of Jewish life. That's our job. But it's not always easy. And I think I don't think one should stay in too many jobs more than 10 years in public life where they're actually having to deal with massive public experiences and public tensions. I think you get a little old with it. It doesn't keep working. It's not fresh.
Okay, I want to push you.
Okay.
You tired of the job? Have you had it? Is it no longer interesting to you? Is your work done?
The work is never done.
Okay, the work's not done?
But that doesn't matter where you are.
Are you tired of it?
I am tired, not of it. I think it's important work and needs to continue. But I am tired, and I've never really been in a position for more than 3 or 4 years. So 10 years for me is a new experience.
Yes, I understand. Very often an organization adopts the personality of the individual who is front and center. There are a lot of people who make JCPA possible, but you are the face and the voice. And you and I could look at some of the other major Jewish institutions, and there's David Harris at AJC. For years and years and years, there was Abe Foxman at ADL. There's Malcolm Hoenlein at the President's Conference. There's Steve Gutow at the JCPA. And you have created a tone for the organization. And I hope you're proud of it, because all of us who have benefited from the work you've done, we understand how much it is your neshama, but also your tone, your vision, your sensitivity that gives an organization that's become very important as a voice of social conscience for the Jewish people. It's your voice. I was sad to hear you're leaving. Oh, the audience should know, you and I have a personal relationship that goes beyond the camera.
It's true.
I am happy for you, personally. Off camera, I'm happy for you. On camera, I'm sad for us, for the Jewish world, and I really wanted you to say here in public, what is it that brought you to this decision? Where do you want to go with your life now?
That's a fair question. I do want to say that I have had predecessors that have been really stars in the work at the JCPA. It used to be called NACRAC. Not too many predecessors. I'm only the fifth person to serve in this position in 75 years. That's a statement about longevity. We have one life, and in this life, I think there are many, many things we want to do. As a man who has produced plays, as a man who has produced baseball teams, I think it's fair to say to Mark Golub that people like to move in different directions.
Very fair. Incidentally, you have been appointed ambassador, have you not?
I'm on the Presidential Commission of Faith and Neighborhood Partnerships. It's a council of really unbelievable, with probably the exception of me, of about 16 or 17 interfaith leaders from around America. And the work we do in this particular council will be dealing with income inequality in one way or another. And, there's many Christians, Muslims, Sikhs, and I'm sure I'm leaving out someone, that the list goes on. It's a sterling group of people to sit in meeting with these people just really pushes my heart forward.
Well, America and the world is lucky to have you, and I hope that you take it as flattering, and I feel it is flattering for you, and Mazal Tov. I assume some of your time is going to be devoted to that.
Much. I mean, it's an important, it's an important council. We hope to be doing important work. It's not income inequality in America is a severe problem. The people that are on the bottom, and the bottom is much bigger than the top. I mean, most of America doesn't live in a place where life is too simple. And to work on those problems is a real honor. And not only an honor, it's a real need. So I feel fortunate to have a chance to contribute even a little bit to this problem that befaces us. It's not, it's interesting. Another country that has significant income inequality concerns is Israel.
Yes.
And it fascinates me that the two countries I have the most connection to,
yes.
This is a real concern that needs to be addressed. I can't do the same work I can do in Israel as I can do in America, so that's why I'm lucky to be here.
Is there anything else you're comfortable telling our audience right now you will be doing that you're planning on going towards? I will tell you. The efforts I'm making at the moment, and it may not pan out, but it looks like it's going to, so I'm feeling more comfortable, is to create an institute of interfaith, which is the key word, advocacy and politics tied to a university, a major university, or more than one. And what I've learned in my life, which didn't just start at JCPA, but certainly at JCPA,
is interfaith work is often very ad hoc. Everyone gets together because they're concerned about Syrian refugees, or they're concerned about the problems in Sudan and Darfur, or we're concerned about poverty in America, or anti-Semitism, or Islamophobia, and we all get together, we write a letter, we go to a press conference, and we think we've done something, us people of faith. The truth is there needs to be a more systematic understanding of how to be effective, how to work together, and how to make a difference, because I think our problems often seem insoluble until we open up our hearts to something a little bit more divine than just our common days. This is what we do today. We're very utilitarian as a people. Can I get this done? But when we open up our world to faith, problems become resolvable. And that's where I think there needs to be work, so that if you're a Catholic, or if you're a Muslim, or you're a mainline Protestant, or evangelical, or a Jew, or a Hindu, you can actually talk to each other. You know where theologies show up and where you probably don't want to walk if you're going to stay connected. Personalities are different. I come from the South. I'm a Jew from the South, and in the South, we're a little bit less aggressive than the people of the North, but a Jew from the South may be a little more aggressive. It's interesting. And I think learning how to deal with each other, learning how to create a strategic plan so that the people of faith can make a difference in whatever they decide to do, assuming they do, learning to know each other. This is a world where this kind of work is essential. And I am passionate that if I can do something, and I feel like I've learned a lot, to move this agenda along, I want to try to do it with the next stage of my life.
That is wonderful. I don't doubt you will make an extraordinary contribution. Take a step back. Now you look. 10 years you've been with the JCPA. Steve, what have you learned about Jewish life in your 10 years with the JCPA? Especially, what have you learned that surprised you? Maybe what's disappointed you. I will press you for what's disappointed you and where you feel, there's still a lot of work to be done. But as you, sort of take a look at what you've seen over these last 10 years, what are some of the things that jump out at you as the critical issues and concerns that are confronting Jewish life today and the American scene as a whole?
Well, I think one of the things that confronts us as Jews in America is to make sure that we maintain a major presence, not just as people within a silo, organized Jewish community, but also a community that cares deeply about this country as Jews. Not just cares deeply about the country, because we do, but cares deeply as Jews, so that there's a Jewish response. And it can be two Jewish responses. It can be a Jewish response on this side of an issue or on that side of an issue. But I think we as a people have to keep ourselves engaged and look at our texts and our history, look at our different friendships and alliances, because if we're going to continue to really be Jews at the highest level of being a Jew, it's always been to be, if we're not in a Jewish state, and most of us aren't, certainly in this country where none of us are, it's to be part of the place we live. It's to be seen in the place we live. And I think there's less of that, and there needs to be more of that, and it needs to be all across the board. It can't just be on one side of the political spectrum or the other.
Left or right? You went on both, left and right.
Left and right, right and left, however you want to say it. And I've always done what I can to make sure that it's true, not just in this job, but in my whole life, on both sides.
Are you saying that you feel that there is not enough of a Jewish component to American Jewry?
No, I think there's a very Jewish component. I want to make sure there's an American component to U.S. Jewry.
And where's the lack?
The lack is sometimes we live in our silos. We think we can only talk about our relationship to Israel, our relationship to anti-Semitism, our relationship to freedom of speech, our relationship to more religion in the public place as Jews.
As opposed
to seeing that when we look at American poverty or world poverty, we do that as Jews too. Mm-hmm. When we look at that, I mean, our from the earliest days, we have been taught that there's a balance. There's a clearly balance in the Torah that we're supposed to not only worry about the widow and the orphan, but we're also supposed to worry, and this was unlike other civilizations, Mark, of the moment, we're supposed to worry about the stranger. We're actually supposed to love the stranger as ourself. Those are words in our most important document. And I think we sometimes forget that worrying about those that aren't us is also part of being us. You know, Emmanuel Levinas probably said it better than I will. Well, certainly said it better than I will. I mean, he's one of my heroes. But you have to look at the other, and you have to see yourself as the other, and you have to create a world in which we as Jews are also part of we as Americans, whether it be American Christians or American Muslims or American Hindus. We have to see that. And I think that there's not enough of it. And I want to say this. I think there's always the tensions of the world. They're not easy. So this is one tension that we, as an important part of the American population, need to continue to nurture. And we'll go both ways. You know, the arc of history bends both ways. One thing I didn't agree with Martin Luther King was that the arc always bends towards a more moral universe, towards justice. It can, if we work on it. And it can bend the other way if we do not. And I think the arc of Jewish life will bend more towards engagement in America as Jews and less towards it. And I think it's an important thing. And I worry about it sometimes.
Okay. So, first of all, I want to remind everybody, you're also a rabbi. You're a wonderful rabbi. And you bring an embrace of the Jewish tradition. You love to teach Judaism. And what you're reminding us is that in the Jewish tradition, the Jew is to be passionately concerned about the well-being of the Jewish community, and
Absolutely.
it's passionately concerned about the well-being of humanity as a whole, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And sometimes in American Jewish life, there seems to be, you're saying, an emphasis on how do Jews care about being Jews. You worry that sometimes Jews don't care about the Jewish obligation, the Jewish mitzvah of caring about the world as a whole. Do I understand you correctly?
You do, and I do think that. But I think part of being a good Jew is part of you use the word
Absolutely.
mitzvah, is to care about those around us
Absolutely.
also. And it's a balance. I don't want to ever say it's not. I mean, our
Why do you use the word balance? I find that an interesting word.
because, you know, some people are going to grow up in a certain culture and society where they're going to have an easy time, a simple time worrying about others. You know, if you grow up in Texas and you're a small community, you're going to worry about the people around you more because you're not ensconced in a world that's just Jewish. And I'm sure that's true of other traditions. So for me, the balance is easier to go towards the more concern about the other. And then if you were brought up in a fully Jewish world, which could happen more in New York or Los Angeles, it's more of a leap. But I do think we have to worry about the tension. We have to be worried about ourselves as a people, and we have to worry about others. And it's going to be different in different people. And there's not one right way. It's not like you have to be, there's not this is not the formula, because the formula for Mark Golub is different than the formula for Steve Gutow, and it's different for some of the rabbis that I know, and some of the other people. And we're both rabbis, but it's different from a lot of the people I know.
Okay. There are those who argue that if anything, when you look at the overall American Jewish community, the problem isn't that Jews are too concerned about the Jewish community and not concerned enough about the community at large, but that the vast majority of American Jews don't have enough of a Jewish sensibility. And that very many Jews grew up, as by the way we did. You know, I grew up a typical Jewish liberal kid. And I understood from the beginning that what was then called social action, that the Jewish concern for the well-being of other minorities, the extent to which Jews were in the forefront of the civil rights movement, the rights for women, more contemporaneously, the rights for gay communities in America, the extent to which the Jew had to fight for that, that was, for many people, Judaism. That was their Judaism. And there wasn't enough of a Jewish concern for the well-being of the State of Israel, or the well-being even of American Jewish life as an entity that also must be protected and nurtured. How do you see it?
Sometimes people get confused and they think, because they live on one side of the Israel spectrum or the other, they're either on the right or the left, and they think that what I might be saying is that only the Jews on the left really care about Israel, or only the Jews on the right really worry about Israel. The truth is, my concern is that both groups that only are concerned about Israel, which I know both very well, that is not serving the balance. That it's not that there shouldn't be. There are many amen corners in our community. There's the amen corner of the left and the amen corner of the right, and they actually don't like to talk to each other. And I think if they found issues that they could actually work on together, they'd learn to see each other's sides of the particularistic issues of Israel, which, anti-Semitism is easy. There's just about one side. There could be a little bit of something every now and then, but fundamentally, Israel's complicated in America, and they're two different sides, and they're very, and they tend to move to the right and to the left, and they don't talk to each other, and they think the other side is an enemy of Israel. And actually, from my engagement, and I'm totally engaged, they both care deeply about Israel, but I'd like them to care. I think actually it'd be healthy to care about something more than just Israel, and to talk about it more, and not to only worry about how we're going to get along about Israel. I think I love Israel. I care deeply about Israel. I have a history of when I started. I took a leave of absence from my law practice in the mid-'80s and started the Southwest region of AIPAC for 2.5 years. It was a set amount of time to do some specific work AIPAC needed. I moved to Austin. And so I care deeply about Israel. Not Israel on the right or Israel on the left. I care about a vibrant Israel. And I think it's best served, actually, when American Jews are not only concerned about Israel, when they're actually concerned about building relationships with others because they believe in something. And then, when I talk to Israel about some of my friends that I've met in politics, they listen very carefully because they actually know me as a friend on several other issues, that I'm not just in it for one thing. I can talk about all of America, and I can act for all of America. I think it's part of being a good Jew.
Okay. All I was asking you is, and I think this is your unique strength, by the way, your ability to be embracing of the issues that confront America as America, and at the same time you're passionate about the state of Israel. It is not always true about individuals. I'm asking you, are you ever concerned that there are too many Jews in America who don't care at all about Israel, and for whom the only issues that are important are the issues that they believe are of social concern? I mean, these are people who are passionate and lovely people with large social consciences of their own, but the social conscience that they experience is limited to the broad issues of America and don't include the state of Israel. And in some way, by the way, there is a faction of those on the left for whom Israel is in some way a problem, as opposed to, and I'm not saying you don't see problems in Israel, but Israel isn't the problem for you. I'm asking you to comment on the extent to which there are those on the other side for whom there's not enough concern for Jewish identity, the Jewish future here in America, and the state of Israel.
There certainly are people. You're the way you pose the question, I would have to acknowledge that it's more of a problem of the left than the right. I think there are plenty of Jews on the left for sure, and I'd love to see them more interested. We can't make them be with that. And on the right for sure, that I'd love to see them more interested in Israel and less interested in their own personal life. That's mostly what it is. I find most of the people on the left and the right, the people that want there to be a greater Israel on the right, I guess this is the right, and the people that, that can't see anything Israel ever did on the left, I think that they do care about Israel. I mean, I think they care deeply about Israel. They want there to be an Israel in some sense, or that's why they spend all this time on it. I don't tend to hate either side. I tend to love both sides and try to get them to see how they can work together to create an Israel that works for both. I mean, you're not going to take extremes in any world and make them come together. But I think you can take people on the right and the left and help them come together. And I think the problem of being not concerned at all about Jewish life or particularistic issues like Israel, it's intrinsic on both sides of the political spectrum. You can't not, most Jews tend to be deeply concerned about Israel. It's important no matter who you are. And there's some people on both sides of the world that don't care. And that's the way the world's going to be. And yeah, of course I'd want them to be more involved in the Jewish community. I think it's essential. I think it's a problem of the left and a problem of the right. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I could convince you of that, but I believe it.
Mm-hmm. I think the slight difference between us is I believe that for many Jews, American Jews, what being Jewish means to them has nothing to do with Israel. Has everything to do with a sense of social justice. And there's something laudable about that. It's just unfortunate if it does not include a concern for the Jewish people and the state of Israel at the same time.
I would, if I thought you were right, I would agree with you. I don't really know too many Jews that aren't deeply concerned about Israel.
Isn't that amazing?
I don't.
All right.
I'm sure there are. There are many, and I just don't know them so well. And they do tend to be on both sides of the spectrum.
One of the things you have spent a great deal of time and energy and thought about has to do with combating the serious polarization in the Jewish community, and it affects America as a whole. Would you speak for a moment how you feel about this polarization on the American scene in general, and where it spills over in ways that concern you in Jewish life as well?
I think there's deep worry here. We're a country that no longer talks easily to each other. We yell at each other. We don't listen to each other. We don't include in our conversations too many people that aren't like us, and if we do, they're sort of like us. They're just a little bit different than us, and we don't have the courage often to be critical of those in a civil way, who really go beyond the boundaries of civility, who really go beyond the boundaries of talking to people, and we call people idiots. And I think I don't think our community is any less or more guilty. I mean, I think it's true. So to work on having people understand that the first thing that's probably most important is getting to know each other, is getting to look at each other face to face, seeing each other's soul, not so much talking about whatever that issue is, whether it's too much or too less taxes, or whether it's how to deal with a certain group in America, or how to deal with Israel if it's our community. I think to see each other's hearts is really the first step.
Sometimes there are cliches in the Jewish world, like any other community. It doesn't mean the cliche is not true. Very often, the reason a cliche is because it's true.
True.
So everybody knows one of the famous lines of Hillel: If I am not for myself, who will be? If I am for myself alone, what am I? Is the normal translation. It begins with, however, the sense of one's own community. What would you say to somebody who would say to you, I understand how the Jewish tradition teaches us it's not enough to care about our own community and our own family, that we must be caring of the world at large and of the pain of other people. However, Steve, it must begin with a priority. And the priority is Jews must first take care of their Jewish family and then go on to a broader sense of community as a whole. Are you comfortable with that articulation?
I do think it's important for Jews, for our community, to truly care about our own community. I think it needs to be an important beginning if we're going to care about others.
But the Jewish world as such already was a diaspora community. By the time we get Hillel and the beginning of the Mishnah and the Talmud, the major centers of Jewish life are in the diaspora, what then became known as the Galut. And it's interesting that it's not simply that we are now living as a minority. The tension that you rightly point out still is a tension which a Jew, no matter where he lives, has to determine where is the first concern. And most of the people who are listening to you, who care about Jewish life, the one thing they would only say to us is, don't act as if there is an equivalency. There's a feeling that your first concern is to the Jewish people. Your next concern is to the American community. And in concentric circles, the Jewish concern is wider and wider for the world and humanity as a whole.
I think that's, I think it's a fair interpretation, but I think it's simpler than I want to be, or could be. I think that, I think it's saying that we all grew up in one way, and obviously some of my people are not just Jews. Some of my people are also Texans. I'm a Texan, and it matters a lot to me. I don't want to misstate it. It matters a lot to me.
Are you saying that Texan is as important to you as Jew?
Texan's very important to me.
Is it as important as Jew, though?
I can't say that, but I can say it's very important. And Mark, you keep trying to create these divisions, which I don't even believe in. So I'm trying to live in your world of you're Jewish first, and then you're American. I'm both. And I'm all these things at once, and they all matter to me. And I think they matter to many people. And I think once we give people the permission that, yes, you have to balance, and some days you're going to be here and some days you're going to be there, we're not meant to be just, sort of strangulated. First I take care of the Jews, and then I take care of first I take care of my family. Yes, I mean, in that balance that we all deal with on a day-to-day, minute-to-minute basis, and we're all different, we grew up in different places, we will probably be worrying about Jewish issues the most, and that's okay. But we're not going to sit there and say, I didn't take care of everything Jewish today, so I can't go out. It isn't who we are. It isn't how most people are. And if you are that way, that's also fine. I'm not actually going to debate people that say, this is how I feel. I'm going to say, go do good. Do you, standing on one leg, go, now do what you feel is right for both, and then go learn, my son, which is what Hillel did say,
right.
Standing on that one leg in Israel.
Very, very, very good. Very good. What do you say to people who ever ask you, when it comes time to vote in a presidential election, to what extent should Israel, my concern for how good the potential candidate would be and the administration the candidate would create, the extent to which it would be good for Israel be the determining factor in deciding whom a Jew votes for in a presidential election?
Once again, I think it's a complicated question, and it's going to have a complicated answer. I think I don't know about for a Jew, but for a Jew like me who believes there needs to be a vibrant, vital state of Israel, it's sort of a paramount litmus test for a candidate, that candidate care deeply about Israel and can care about Israel's survival. I don't mean necessarily the candidate for city council somewhere, but basically I think that anybody that's dealing with federal office and federal issues needs to be a person that passes my litmus test. It doesn't have to be their most important issue. It has to be an issue that I'm comfortable with. And I suppose if I find someone's anti-Israel or anti-Semitic, they failed that litmus test, and I'm not going to vote for them. So that's what I see. I know the vast majority of the Jewish community, according to polls and surveys, don't put Israel first. But I tend to believe that they do put Israel as essential. So if you're not going to be supportive of Israel, and they may have different views of what that means, I want to say that, but if you're not going to be supportive of Israel, they're probably not going to be considered by most Jews. I mean, it's a democratic country. We're a free world. A lot of independence. People will do what they want. But my feeling is people should take Israel very seriously. But it doesn't have to be the main issue they worry about. It has to be an issue that's it's a bottom line issue. It's a litmus test issue. Mm-hmm. If you're anti-Israel, I'm probably not going to be supportive. And I don't think all Jews are going to buy what I just said, but most do.
Okay. Most candidates are, to one extent or another, pro-Israel. Would you not argue?
I think.
Okay. And so sometimes this is more a theoretical question than a real question. And both of us are skeptical of theoretical questions. However, the way it is normally phrased is, imagine a president who is going to appoint Supreme Court justices who will vote on social issues in line with typical ways in which Jews believe that our country has been wonderful in general, and especially for Jews, because it has been so open to the concerns and the care that the Supreme Court has traditionally, certainly since the 50s and 60s, been expressing a sense of social justice. So imagine so for example, most American Jews, whether they love or are happy with any specifics having to do with abortion, they certainly believe America should permit women the right to seek an abortion. And they don't want Roe v. Wade overturned. And they don't want a president to come on who is going to, in some way, appoint Supreme Court justices who would overturn Roe v. Wade. The majority of American Jews seem to be very much supportive of the idea that this country give as a right of citizenship health care to its citizens. And therefore, many people, whether they see problems with Obamacare or not, the Affordable Care Act, they don't want that legislation overturned. And they don't want a president who's going to work for that. These issues are seen as domestic concerns, as opposed to the international concerns of, number one, how does the state of Israel, how does America deal with the state of Israel? And number two, the issue of global terrorism, and how does an American administration deal with the war on terror? And there are Jews who will say, well, I have to make a decision. Which of those concerns is more important to me when I go and vote for a presidential candidate or for a presidential ticket?
Of course.
And that's what I was asking you. When a Jew is conflicted in that way, do you have any guidance? Can you tell us how you deal with that when you have to determine how you're going to throw a ballot between a party or a platform or a candidate which you feel is very strong in terms of the sense of social justice here in America, but you may find Jews who worry that a current or future administration may not be good enough on international issues and the state of Israel?
You know, I think people, I don't imagine myself ever voting for a candidate that is anti-Israel or antagonistic to Israel, or in my mind. I mean, it might be different than in your mind and someone else's mind, but I can't even imagine doing it. It is a base litmus test issue for me. But I don't know how to tell other people how to deal with that issue, whether or not it has to be their most important issue. I mean, we know that there are many, many Jews in America who don't feel that way. They don't care. I didn't say you were wrong. There are many that don't care, and all I said was they're on the right and the left. I think most do care, and I think those that care, well, I can't tell people what to do. It's just a country that people are, they've grown up in a culture and a society, and we're going to do our best to try to let them understand why there's a richness in Jewish life, why they should be part of it, why they should care about Israel. I think it's beneficial to us and to Israel as a community, to Israel and to our country, for Jews to be involved. But I don't see myself as an advisor. I see myself perhaps as a counselor if somebody comes to me with specific questions. In other words, I don't want to have an active program. This is what you must do. If somebody comes to me, a friend or even a less than friend, acquaintance, and says, Steve, Rabbi. Well, if they said Rabbi, I'd probably be much less willing to talk about politics. But if they said, Steve, what do you think? I would talk to them about who they are and how they see the world and respond accordingly. I don't know a better way to answer the question. And I'm not saying that's the only way to answer the question. I'm just saying for this human being, I don't know a better way to answer the question.
You are wonderful and you are unique. I learn from you all the time. And there is an approach to how one deals with people that is the greatest strength you have. And it's not about a specific idea. Most of your ideas I also gravitate towards. But it's not about ideas. It's about a means of dealing with people that is so wonderful. And so whenever you speak, I'm just so glad people are able to hear you. And I thank you for that very, very much. So I come back to the question, as you look at these 10 years and what has troubled you, what things you have seen have troubled you. You've also dealt with the state of Israel. You travel often to Israel. You travel often and you've met the Palestinian community as well. What do you wish American Jews understood more, either about Israel in particular, or the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or the Palestinian community itself? what are some of the mistakes you feel we as American Jews make, and you wish you had the ability? It's not changing people. I'm not asking you to change, but what would you like to expose them to, or wish they'd seen and experienced that you've had the good fortune to see and experience?
I don't know about the good fortune to see and experience part of the question, but I do know that I wish people could see that there's more than one side to the issue of Israel, and that those people who see, the Israel is always wrong, the Palestinians is always right. They don't open themselves up to thinking about the very complex, nuanced problem of what would happen in Israel if it was just carte blanche. Here Palestinians, run your lives and we're out of here. I wish they could understand. I think they could think through. They often become so ensconced in their viewpoints about how the Palestinians have been, and there's a lot to the viewpoint, have been, treated badly, sometimes by Israel, sometimes by their own people, sometimes by the rest of the world. But they need to be able to see that, Israelis are trying to make it too. The other side also. Those people that seem to think that Israel is always right, they need to be able to see that, the Palestinians have gone through a lot of hardship. And I'm going to tell you, I just said two things that if there are, people that are thinking about this and listening, they're probably angry at me. And they're on both sides of those equations. They're saying, how could he even think that? And I know I'm right, because I live in a world where people get angry because I say either one of those two things. And I believe in both of them. And I believe that you'll look at it differently than me, and people will be on different, but they have to look at that idea that there's these two different narratives going on in Israel, in Palestine, in the Palestinian people, that need to be merged together and looked at together and seen how can we make something work? How can we create a state in which Palestinians feel comfortable, in which Israelis feel comfortable, and they're not always at war with each other? I don't think we can do that. We can help do that. That's all we can do in America, for sure, if we can't see that there are two sides to these issues.
Are you saying that you see a possible way in which there could be peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians, between the river and the sea?
You mean in one state?
In any way at all?
Yeah, I think there could be. I think there were times when it was close. I think in 2000, I remember after Camp David, I was running around talking to many of my friends in Israel, and all of them said, well, we now have to learn how to get along with the different religious communities in Israel, but the fact of the matter is that the Palestinian issue is solved. We're moving right forward on that. And, it didn't happen. Could it have happened? Yeah.
Why didn't it happen?
I don't know the answer. I think it needs leadership that opens its hearts. I think it needs people that are big enough on Israel's side to see that, while Israel's physical security is always integral and essential, but Israel can be more open in many ways to Palestinians that they're not, and it needs, just as importantly, to have on the Palestinian side people that can say, there are just so many people in Israel. We see the polls and surveys that want us to have a state. The Israelis want to be protected, but they want us to have a state. And the truth is that if we open our hearts to them, then maybe they too will the openings come together. It's like when I open my heart to you, Mark, and you to me, you and I immediately find ways to walk together and to be together. I think it's true of peoples, and I think there's too much of this, one side or the other. And I think it's just a huge mistake. It's almost automatically wrong. It doesn't mean Israel doesn't have to protect itself physically. It does. It can't give an inch on that. But giving an inch on that doesn't mean going too far on that. And the same is true of the Palestinians. If they don't say to themselves and to Israel, we want to get to know you. And I have seen, by the way, and I'll just say it in front of your audience, so many groups now of Israelis and Palestinians working together to try to build something. A group I brought, a couple of leaders called Shorashim, or Roots, and it also has an Arabic name which I can't remember at this moment. You might know it. And there are groups of settlers, some settler rabbis, and groups of Palestinians, some radicals, and they've grown together on the West Bank in the Gush, and I had a conversation between the leader of the Palestinians of this group and the rabbi, one of the rabbis of this group at the Council on Foreign Relations in June, and watched them talk not only to each other but answer questions and view what they had said. The rabbi particularly said, you know, I used to not even imagine what's going on now until I walked over and got to know these people. And so I think it's that kind of openings that can happen and only can happen if we're able to say that the other side has a point of view.
Mm-hmm. How fascinating that you were able to do this at the Council of Foreign Relations, because this means it's on the public record.
It's on the public record.
And
it is on the record.
Yes. And the question then becomes, to what extent does the Palestinian in some way represent those who are in power in the Palestinian world? What's your sense of that?
I think in the Palestinian world, as in the Israeli world, there's, you know, not only in the ruling parties and groups, there are people of different persuasions and even within themselves different persuasions. I remember not too many years ago, I used to go meet with the prime minister of the PA, of the Palestinian Authority, constantly, sometimes alone.
Salam Fayyad.
Salam Fayyad. And I think we've talked a little
Yes.
bit about Prime Minister Fayyad. What a wonderful man who, you know, really did stretch out as far as I could imagine to wanting to make sure that Israelis felt secure, and often was, you know, at odds with his own people, which is possibly one of the reasons he left. Because I don't think he had to leave the prime ministership. I think sometimes people just want to leave where they are. You know, sometimes he had his own party. He wasn't the Fatah party. I forgot the name of his party. But at one time it was 10 to 15% in the polls, and then the economy, which he was, you know, he'd actually, just so you'll know, he'd actually got his doctorate in finance at economics at the University of Texas. So you know how terrific this man was. But he was a wonderful leader, and you know, I see that too in Israel. I'm not going to get into the politics of Israel. It's a little more complicated for me to do that. But there are people that are open to the idea that Israelis have to, you know, do their best to welcome Palestinians in, see what they can do, and see what works.
Are you worried that the Israeli people as a whole are not welcoming of Palestinians? And I say that understanding that as we're sitting here at the table now, we're going through a hard time on the streets of Israel. But for decades, the Israeli people have said, if we ever were to be convinced that there was an interlocutor, a partner who would live side by side with us in peace, the overwhelming majority, we're talking about more than 80% of Israelis, say it's not about land, so we'll figure out where the border should be and they'll have a state. Now that we'll work with them and we'll help them. And my sense when I talk to Israelis all the time is, if there ever could be that, we would welcome it. It would mean our children wouldn't be at risk the way they're at risk now. Every generation of Israelis wants their children to be the first that don't have to be in the IDF. So my sense is that the Israeli people have been ready for this for a long time, and forces beyond our control and beyond their control have kept it from happening. And when you talk about Camp David, or you talk about whether it's Barak or Olmert, or even the most recent Obama Kerry plan, which was enormously forthcoming for the Palestinian state. And my understanding is that ultimately Abbas just wouldn't answer. That it's not because Israel or Israelis are reluctant to live side by side with the Palestinians. And for all of your legitimate concern about security, there always seems to be a way to work that out. But that the real problem here is Fayyad was never really in power. That you do have a democracy. As dysfunctional as American democracy may be, as dysfunctional as Israeli, it's still a democracy. You don't have a democracy in the Palestinian world, and that in some way the Palestinian people are being held hostage by a leadership that just does not want to make peace with the state of Israel.
There are significant significant surveys of both the Israeli people and the Palestinian people. And the numbers are huge. They neither at the moment feel very comfortable or confident that it can happen. But that if it could happen, they both want it. They don't, it's not like they don't want it. The fact is the Palestinian people are just as hard-hearted at the moment as the Israeli people feel towards this idea. To open their hearts to this idea is hard when they both perceive a lot of ill treatment by the other, and you get closed and you don't open and you don't talk, which is why groups like Shorashim or Kids for Peace, these are great efforts that are going on in Israel. And there's others, some I can't even talk about because they're under the table, but they're lovely things that are going on. I think it really does require great leadership, and maybe it's been less forthcoming at times on the Palestinian side, but I don't think it's as forthcoming as it could be on either side. And I think if both sides really open themselves up to say, we're going to make this happen, we're going to make the compromises we need to. Israelis say, we're not going to give up on our security, and Palestinians say we do need to have some, livable land, something that actually is viable, that can work. I think there could be a peace, and it's maybe I'm hopeful, optimistic.
That's who you are,
and that's also who we are as a people. We named a national anthem Hatikva.
That's right.
Not because we don't have hope; it's because we do have hope.
That's right. Very well said.
Thank you.
Take one moment more to talk to me about what you view as the issue confronting Jewish pluralism in the state of Israel. It's also an issue that you have been involved in. Give me a sense of where you feel that's going.
I think this will bend towards justice. I think slowly but surely Israel will move towards a more, I see more and more Orthodox open to more and more power and capacities for ritual identity by more progressive Jews. And I think it will keep happening. I think there'll be an argument on the ground. I mean, I feel very strongly, I'm a Reconstructionist rabbi, that that Judaism is not it's not a one-way deal. I don't think you can just throw it down people's throats, and some people will sometimes, and they may even be, it may be the right course. It probably, knowing me, wouldn't be my course, but it may be the right course. But I do think it's going to move towards a more, the arc of that justice will move towards justice, the arc of that.
Okay. As we come to the end of the hour, I've asked you what troubles you, and I know who you are as a human being. So I want to give you now, I want to really speak to your soul. I want you to tell me what gives you the most sense of hope, you personally. What excites you most now about as you leave the JCPA to do whatever you're going to do, and you look at where Jewish life is in America, the American Jewish community, what gives you the most sense of hope and you're happiest about and makes you optimistic about the Jewish future?
I think that we as a community are very willing to stand up and stay the course when it comes to huge and clear and unambiguous infractions on human rights in America or in the world. And I think that, people may have different emphases on how far they want to go with this or that, but I think overall, I look at 1,000 rabbis signing a highest letter about Syrian refugees. I look at the Orthodox Union putting out a press release which said, yes, we may have to vet more, but it should be vetting with the idea of getting to go. It was a brilliant press release. I wish we had said the same thing. It was just a brilliant press release. I think we are, in our essence, not willing to be okay about bigotry. I think Jews have been pretty firm about Islamophobia, opposed to it. I think Jews have been pretty firm about human rights in the world. I think Jews have been pretty firm about all this. And of course there'll be people that are different, but most of us are. And I'm proud of our community, and I think it stands up for those values really just as strongly as it probably ever did.
Do you believe in the future of American Jewish life?
Absolutely.
Because?
Because we're a community that renews itself always. We're strong now. We're not a weak community in America. We're a strong community. We're by nature. We'll look at what our problems are, and they will, if you come up with a problem in the morning, by dinner it'll be the worst problem in the world, and all the future of Jewry will be at stake. But the truth is, We're a vibrant community with all kinds of groups blossoming and all kinds of groups thinking a new way to see their Judaism through the Torah often, and sometimes through different texts. But that's okay. I see American Jewry blossoming and excited, and I even tragically is the problems that face European Jewry. You can still see those wonderful communities in Denmark or Germany that are growing, that are sort of exciting. And I'm not in any way. I mean, I think the problem of European anti-Semitism and world anti-Semitism is huge. But I see growing communities everywhere. I see Lamud as an exciting venture. I see people. So I'm excited about our people. I think we renew. We keep growing, and I come to tears even as I say that to you, Mark, because it makes me so excited. I'm thinking of all the places around this country and the world where through all the tension, all the concerns, and they're real, there's also an excitement that we're Jews and we're building something.
Oh my God, you're so wonderful. We were together. We've been together many times. It's not just the civility conference that you chaired here in New York. The hunger seders that you lead in Washington, which are extraordinary statements of what Jewish values and Jewish ethics and the mitzvot are, and how they lead you to extend yourself to care for anybody who is hungry and anybody who is poor. And every statement you put out, I'm always proud to read. What you have done is you've made us better Jews, Steve Gutow. And there's nothing more, there's no greater accolade one can give another person. You are a treasure. You may not leave the Jewish scene. You may take a different position. You will morph. But you will always be someone everybody looks to. And you're also a fabulous rabbi, and you promised me that you'll do some teaching on JBS. But I love you very much, Kol Tu v'Hatzlacha, and you always have a home here, you know that.
Toda rabba.
Rabbi Steve Gutow, who for 10 glorious years has served as president and CEO of the JCPA, the Jewish Council for Public Affairs, an extraordinary contribution he's made to Jewish life. There's no question he will continue to do so wherever he goes, whatever he chooses to do, and we will follow him right here on JBS. As always, I invite you to be in touch with me with any thoughts or comments you may have to any of the ideas expressed on this edition of L'Chaim. Please email me, write me, post on our Facebook wall, tweet me. I look forward to hearing from you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'Chaim, my friends, to life.
L'Chaim is a presentation of Jewish education in media.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to Jem, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.